Okay, let's try this again and see if we can hear me. We had to reschedule from a little bit earlier. I apologize for that. Um, we were having issues. Apparently, you guys couldn't hear me. So hopefully this time it will be more successful if you're with me. And if you have my voice, just let me know in the chat so I don't talk again for another half an hour without anybody being able to hear what I'm saying. Great. Thank you, Angie, last time for letting me know that you couldn't hear me because I was under the impression that everybody could hear me, and I talked for a good half an hour all by my lonesome self. So thank you for letting me know that you could not, in fact, hear me. So um, let's start from the beginning again, and we're going to talk about neurographic art. So I want to start this topic kind of general today and then get more and more specific as we go along. So I'm going to start with, in general, what is neurographic art and what is the difference between neurographic art in general and neurographica as a specific school of thought. So neurographic art, great, fantastic. So neurographic art in general is kind of doodling. It's a very intrinsic practice. Most of us have done it in our childhood with drawing lines that intersect with each other and then rounding those intersections. As long as you're doing that, you're doing some form of neurographic art. And this is something that is very soothing. It's what we've been doing as kids. Anytime we've been bored in school, listening to somebody lecture, drawing those doodles and drawing those lines, that's all neurographic art. Now, neurographics in general, as a modality of expression, isn't just finding its way into art or visual art. It's also finding its way into dance, into architecture, and into different areas of our life because we're starting to understand the effects of our environment on our psyche and on our nervous system. So, because of that, neurographic art is becoming very, very popular. Now, there is different types of neurographic art out there. Some people are following the principles of neurographica, some people are not. Now, neurographica is a very specific school of thought and psychological practice, essentially, that was created. So he created a method that follows something called an algorithm, which in its basic form is a 7-step process that you take forward in order to create this expression that you're putting on paper. Neurographic art in general doesn't follow every single step of the 7-step process. So if you are following those 7 steps faithfully and exactly, you are following Neurographica. If you are not, then you are in the neurographic art territory. Now, I was trained in Neurographica, but I find certain aspects of Neurographica to be restricting for my personal practice. So the practice that I have developed is very much influenced and is using certain elements out of Neurographica, but I don't practice Neurographica specifically. I've developed my own thing over the last 4 or 5 years of practicing this art for myself through my own healing journey. So I'm sharing with you the version of neurographic art that is highly inspired by Neurographica, but it is my own version of doing what I'm doing. So, when it comes to this kind of neurographic art, let's talk about what it is first. Neurographic art is this visual method of communication between your conscious and subconscious minds. Why is that important? Well, a lot of the time, we don't even realize that our conscious mind is talking to us. Most of us are unaware of the voice in our head that is talking to us 90% of the day. And it doesn't matter what side of the argument it takes, it just wants to talk. That's our conscious mind. Our conscious mind is also the mind that knows that we are awake. It's experiencing the environment around us. It knows that you are sitting in this live right now. It is hearing my voice and it is giving you a story about what's happening right now because your central nervous system is collecting all of this data from different sensory organs. Your eyes are taking in the sight, your ears are hearing the sound, your tactile sensation is aware of the chair underneath you. Your conscious mind knows your position in space and time. So all of these things are happening simultaneously, but you don't experience any of these things as a collection of sensations. You experience the story of, I'm watching Mary on a live. Right? So we take in the totality of the stimuli around us, but our brain actually puts a filter through it and gives it to us as a story, as a narration that we are experiencing. The way that we narrate our story in our mind is our conscious mind. It's the part of us that uses language. Our subconscious mind, on the other hand, is aware of everything that is happening while we are conscious. Yes. The voice in the head can be very loud, it can be interruptive, it can be all of those things, 100%, Angie. So, but the subconscious mind, on the other hand, speaks to us in a very different way. It is not only aware of everything that is happening while you're awake and your conscious mind is working, but it is also aware while you're asleep. It is the reason why you don't fall off your bed while you're asleep because your subconscious mind remembers where it is in time and space. And it also takes in the totality of all of your experiences and puts it through a sieve that then gives the conscious story the story it's telling you. That sieve that is created for the information that you're taking in and the tonality of the narration that your conscious mind takes comes from your subconscious mind and everything that has been programmed into it through your childhood, through the things that you've been taught by your parents, through society, through culture, through your own personal experiences, both positive and negative. There's a totality of patterns that your subconscious mind is holding on to at all times, and it's sieving any incoming new information through that. Most of the time, we are unaware of what is happening in our subconscious mind, but our subconscious mind is the part of us that is speaking to the universe. So, when we set out intentions, when we want to experience certain things in our life, it is not the conscious part of me that says, I want this, that is talking to the universe. It is the subconscious that is telling me the story of who I am that is speaking to the universe. This is why sometimes we find ourselves in destructive patterns in our life, even though consciously we want that experience. If we have ever been in abusive relationships, places where we have stayed longer than we should have, that's exactly why. Because our subconscious mind is holding on to certain truths in the background that are manifesting themselves over and over as our experienced life. So, if we want to change the way we experience our life, we need to change the filters that our subconscious mind is using to give our conscious mind the narration of what our experience is right now. So, this is why it's important to have a method of communication between your conscious and subconscious mind that is not linguistically based, because your subconscious does not speak to you in language, it speaks to you in symbology. Your subconscious comes to you in your dreams. So, in your dreams, you see images, you have sensations, you have emotions. That is the way that your subconscious mind communicates with you. The minute we are using language, we are in our conscious experience. So this form of art with purpose allows for that communication, allows for your subconscious to speak with certain practices, and then it allows you to, with your conscious mind, tell your subconscious what it is that you want it to think. What are the beliefs you want it to have once you've gotten rid of the thoughts and beliefs that no longer serve you and the experience that you want to have in your life. So, neurographic art is a psychological process that allows for information processing at body, mind, and soul levels. When it comes to neurographic art, especially the way that I practice it, it's always about a triplicity. It is always about three different things. So, even whether it is our expression, which is personal, societal, and universal, or whether it is the process of you being aware in the moment, in the body, the mind, and your subconscious mind or your soul. It works. This is why it is such a powerful process because it gives you a somatic release, it gives you a bodily experience, it gets the thoughts and at the same time, it allows for communicating with that higher part of you that expresses itself in symbology because in neurographic art, we get rid of expression through words. So it is essentially the depiction of your personal, societal, and divine expressions. Every one of us has a personal expression. It's the way we know ourselves. We have a societal expression. It's the way society gets to know us and interacts with us. And then there's a higher self. There's a higher version of us. And every time that we do neurographic art, we go exactly through that process. We express ourselves personally first. I'll explain this in a minute, and then societally, and then we bring in universal consciousness. In general, there are two types of neurographic art forms or practices. One is called the release, which is where your subconscious mind speaks to you through imagery. The other one is called programming, where the process of self expression is one that is done with a lot of control and with this very specific intention. We have this intention in releases as well. In releases, we are letting go of dark feelings and disturbing feelings that we no longer want to have. And in the process of creating harmonization around that, we start unlocking new pathways in our mind and in our subconscious mind. And it's we start to receive messages from our subconscious about how to move forward, about how to heal ourselves. This is the healing part of this art. The programming side, on the other hand, allows you to reprogram the subconscious that has been programmed by society, by our parents, by schooling, by all of those processes, and start putting in programs that we now are putting in on purpose, by intention. It is not the kinds of things we have received as children or as through our upbringing. It is actually the process of us choosing what kind of experience we want to have moving forward and programming that into our subconscious. Your subconscious mind is very, very susceptible to your conscious mind. Anything that you say to yourself or to other people, it takes personally. It's like a 4-year-old with no filter. So if I turn around and tell somebody, oh, you are very successful, my subconscious thinks there's a part of me that's successful. If I turn around and tell somebody, oh, you're very ugly, my subconscious mind will turn around and say, there's a part of me that's ugly. It sees a part of itself in the other. And unlike the ego, which is part of your conscious mind, which is always trying to compare itself to other people and needs to find itself better, your subconscious mind is just there taking information in. So it is very susceptible to you saying what it should believe. But at the same time, if it has evidence to the contrary, it's not just going to take what you said as at face value, which is why affirmations a lot of the time don't work. If happy people don't go standing in front of the mirror and repeat to themselves, I'm happy, and then that makes them happy. That doesn't work because your subconscious mind is present and it can at any moment give you the list of reasons and problems and issues why you are not in fact happy. So when there is a discrepancy between the conscious statements and subconscious fact, the subconscious wins. So if I stand in front of the mirror and say, I am happy because I am blessed, because I am healthy, because I have a roof over my head, because I have food in the fridge, because I have a great community around me, because I have this person who loves me, because then all of a sudden my mood starts to lift because my subconscious starts to go, yeah, that's right. You're right. You're right. So there may be these other problems as well, but everything you're telling me right now is true. This is why when we do affirmations, we want to be very specific about the reasons why what we're saying is valid. Because otherwise, your subconscious mind is going to hold on to beliefs that have been there longer, that have established neural pathways that are easier for your brain to use. Our brain uses a lot of energy in our body. It's actually the largest energy center in our body. And in order for it to conserve on energy, it tries to be efficient. This is why it is very good at creating patterns and pattern recognitions and repeating those patterns. This is why habits are hard to break, because your brain literally creates a pathway for neurons to fire from point A to point B. And the more you use these neural pathways, the wider they become and the faster neurons actually travel through them. When you create a brand new neural pathway, it's smaller, it's tighter, the travel is slower, and it takes more energy. This is why it takes longer to break habits and form new ones, because as we stop using old neural pathways, those pathways kind of collapse on top of themselves and they get smaller. And the new ones that you have been working on are going to gain more and more um, energy and more ease of use and more repetition. So, this is the process that we are trying to trigger in our brain through the use of art. Right. So, because it is not the kind of art that is depicting the world outside and our observations from the world outside and trying to put it onto paper, it doesn't matter what your artistic talent is. There is no barrier to entry into neurographic art, because essentially all we are doing doodling, which is what we have been doing as humanity since we started drawing art on cave walls. So as long as humanity has been around, there has been some kind of neurographic art. Now, with our understanding of neuroscience and these kinds of things like neural lines and rounding, which I'll go to through more detail in a second, we are coming to a place where we can use doodling to our advantage. Right. So we can use something that has been very inherent for us and very intrinsic to us with a new kind of purpose. And this is your personal art. And it's not a matter of you opening a gallery or becoming an artist, but it's an exploration of you into your internal world. Because when it comes to healing yourself and healing ourselves mentally, fortunately, unlike Western medicine and external medicine, there is no doctor that can go in there for you. You are the only one. Your subconscious mind is the only one that has the totality of the information. And you are the only one who knows exactly what you need in any given moment. Nobody else can know that as well as you do. Nobody else can validate you the way that you do. But this process is a painful process, because most of the time we're going into trauma, we're going into difficult, painful subjects that we usually want to avoid, because that's again part of our culture. We are taught to avoid pain. So instead of going into it and opening it up and really looking at it and resolving it internally, we rely on external forces or sources to tell us what to do and how to feel, or we start substituting other feelings. We start going through things like retail therapy or drugs or sex or alcohol or overwork. We start to distract ourselves from our pain and from our discomfort. And in fact, neurographic art is not supposed to be comfortable. I'll talk about this in neurographic lines. You're not supposed to feel comfortable when you do this. This is the process of you learning to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because discomfort is where your healing is, and discomfort is where your growth is. As long as we're comfortable, we're not growing. They call it growing pains for a reason. So, in general, the way that I practice neurographic art is, like I said, this back and forth between a programming session and a release session. In a release session, our subconscious mind is the one that is expressing itself. In the programming section, it's the conscious mind that is dictating to the subconscious mind about what to think. Now, what makes this kind of neurographic art very, very powerful, especially neurographica and neurographica driven exercises, is the introduction of two items. One is neuroline, and the other one is rounding. Rounding is simple because a neurographic line is a organ that's counterintuitive, which means you don't put your hand on the paper and let it go wherever it wants to go. It goes where it is not expected. So you are constantly challenging yourself in every point of drawing a neurographic line, and it never repeats itself because in this universe, nothing ever happens twice. We are never in the same space and time ever again. Even though the year, we think that the year goes in a cycle, and we every depending on your calendar, January 1st or March 21st, we come back to the same position. In truth, we are spiraling in the universe. So every year we may come back to the same position in terms of our orbit, but we are not in the same place again. And life is unpredictable. Life never goes as you expect it. And the more we get used to this idea of becoming comfortable with the uncertainty, because certainty is what our brain craves, our logical mind craves, the more we have the ability to respond in life instead of being reactive. So the idea of a neural line is that it is a line that is expressing the willful surrender and the unpredictability of life. In the process of creating a neurographic line, a lot of the time we connect the breath to the neurographic line because the neurographic line is creating a connection between body, mind, and soul, or higher self, or subconscious, whatever you want to call it, makes no difference. Your body is having a somatic experience. You're experiencing the discomfort, the tension of creating a neurographic line. Your mind is aware of what is happening. It is experiencing the discomfort. It's firing off with all kinds of thoughts and warnings about how it is finding what's happening uncomfortable. And then your higher mind, is a higher self or subconscious mind, is also there trying to observe everything that is happening because that's what it does all the time. So a neurographic line is a way of connecting all of these together. And when we create neurographic lines, we're trying to create connections. Through rounding the neurographic lines together, we mimic the kinds of connections that you find both inside of our body and intergalactically. If you look at the models of the universe and how they all connect together, they look very, very similar to the way the neurons in our bodies connect together. So if I show you a example of what we do in neuroart. It might be in my other notebook. I want to find something. I mean, this doesn't have as many lines, but when you look at these kinds of connections that we create with neurographic lines, that's what I'm talking about. The neurons in our body have a very similar kind of connection, and intergalactically, if you look at interstellar connections, they look very, very similar. They look like bubbles as forming on top of a bubble bath, and that kind of connection. So as above, so below, right? So we are mirrors of the universe as a whole, which is why this idea of um, body, mind, and soul and triplicity really, really works really, really well. So, and the other reason that the breath is really important in this practice is because when we start to talk about negative thoughts and emotions and feelings, our body and our central nervous system goes into fight or flight. As sophisticated as we are running on a very simple central nervous system that only has two modalities. You are either in rest and digest, or you are in fight or flight. You're either using your sympathetic nervous system or your parasympathetic nervous system. And the switch between these two is your breath. Anything that registers on emotions registers on the breath. Anything that registers on the body registers on the breath. And so when we get into a place where we are afraid, when we are triggered into fight or flight, our breathing pattern changes. We start to breathe more shallowly. We start to breathe from the chest, and we start to get ready for running away or fighting. So our extremities get more blood, our circulation changes. We start to lose access to our prefrontal cortex, which is our reasoning center, and our reptilian brain kicks in and starts reacting. So in a fight or flight state, we are reactive. in a rest and digest space, we feel more relaxed. Our body is more relaxed. Our heart rate is lower. Our breathing is more deep. We are doing more belly breaths than shallow breaths. And in that situation, we have access to our prefrontal cortex. And as information comes in, we become more responsive than reactive. So when we go into trauma work and when we start to bring up and start to express these negative thoughts and feelings, our body, our nervous system wants to go into fight or flight. And by staying present and by staying present on the depth of our breath and having longer exhales than inhales while we do this art process, we take ourselves from a reactive state and put ourselves into a responsive state so that our prefrontal cortex can finally deal with those things that were stored in our being as emotions, as things that we never processed logically. The more successfully you process things that happened emotionally logically, the more you diffuse their emotional weight. This is alchemy. This is the process of healing. And nobody can do this for you as well as you. Unfortunately, with this kind of emotional surgery, there is no surgeon, there is no anesthesiologist, there is no way of me putting you out without you feeling the pain and the discomfort. And this is why we are finding a method to learn to be comfortable with the discomfort so we can dig deep, so we can go into our own selves and remove ourselves from being in a reactive state and put ourselves into a responsive state so that we can create the kind of life experience we want to have rather than continuing to repeat the kinds of life experiences we don't want to have. That's the power of healing, and that's the power of using this art to have that kind of access to your internal dialogue. The other part of this is in any kind of therapy that you do with another person, whether a coach, whether a psychiatrist, whether a psychologist, whether a therapist, it doesn't matter. You are using language. And as soon as we start to use language, our internal editor kicks in. We become very cognizant of how the other person on the other end is receiving the information that we're giving them. So we either edit ourselves in our mind and we don't say the whole thing, or if we actually are honest, there's a part of us that's wondering what the other person is thinking. And there's a burden that's put on you in this process of healing. With neurographic art, nobody else is going to know the intention behind the lines you drew. You are not telling this story to anybody else. You're telling the story, but you are not doing it to anyone or for anyone else. Therefore, this idea of you having to explain yourself, having to validate what it is that you are thinking and feeling gets taken out of this process, and it allows you a moment to digest what you need to digest with yourself and within yourself. So it becomes a personal practice of healing and one that relies on you alone. It puts the locus of identity internal to you. The world is not external to us. Our life experience is not external to us. I know the stimuli is coming from the external environment, but the way that we choose to react or respond to that is internal. By taking control of your internal environment, you can transform your external environment. And that's the journey we want to go on with this process of neurographic art. And that's the reason it works. So we talked about what a neurographic line is. Um, so one of two things I want to mention about neurographic line is a process of intentional surrender. And this is why sometimes when people are having a hard time getting a hang of how to draw an unpredictable line, we give them these kinds of exercises of put something round on the piece of paper and then trace and then follow that and see where it goes. That's intentional surrender. You're surrendering to the will of that round object, whether I use crystals or coins or anything and or a bean, and you as you're pushing it through, you're surrendering your to the will of that being, but where the line is going into is intentional by you. So it's this process of both being in control and being open simultaneously, and it creates tension and discomfort inside of the body. It wakes up your senses because you are not just automatically doing what you are used to doing, which is what we do when we create squiggly patterns or we start creating spirals and little doodles that we do that are very symmetrical in nature. Nothing in this universe is perfectly symmetrical. So, by creating neurographic lines, we are not just depicting energy in a graphical sense, but we're also creating tension, and we're creating a comfortable, safe discomfort that allows us to go into the process of growth. So, neuroline is one aspect of the neurographic art that's really, really important. The second part is rounding. The reason rounding is important is because symbolically speaking, circles bring us unity, bring us wholeness, bring us completion, and a sense of serenity. When we see intersections that have jagged edges, we have experienced jagged edges in our environment, right? So when we were as human beings, we are not born or created alone. We develop in the womb of a mother. We develop in a circle or in an oval. And within that, there is a sense of safety. The minute we are born and that we of me and mom becomes I, we start to lose that sense of connection and we start craving that all over again. So we need this idea of becoming whole again, of becoming complete again. And circles, whether it be in wedding rings, whether it be in the sun, whether it be in the shape of our own planet, there is something soothing in terms of a circle. When we start to have interactions as I that are unpleasant with people around us, whether it be our parents, our siblings, our friends, our loved ones, our romantic partners, it doesn't matter. When we have sharp emotions, we recognize those, graphically speaking, as sharp edges. And as you create roundness with those sharp edges, you create peace internally. So your emotional skin doesn't feel as burnt, and you can be in more of a responsive space rather than a reactive one. So this is why the process of rounding, it makes you present, it makes your mind curious, and it allows you to be present in an uncomfortable moment while at the same time feeling very peaceful. A lot of people, I've had two types of students. Most people really, really enjoy the process of rounding. All people, in fact, over time get to really love the process of rounding. They look forward to about an hour or hour and a half that we spend every session just on rounding the intersections that we have. Some people at the very beginning show resistance to it. They start to get into this space of, oh, this is silly, this is not doing anything, oh my god, why did I draw so many lines, why are there so many intersections, this is taking so long, I need to get up and make dinner for the family, I need to get that thing done for work, oh, how long is this going to take? This is the process of your ego stepping in. This is the process of your conscious mind stepping in and saying, I don't know what's happening here, and I'm not sure I like it. And since it is my job to protect you from unpleasant things, let me give you excuses for you to stop doing this thing that feels uncomfortable. The challenge is in staying with that and finishing that process through. Because through that resistance, through that discomfort comes discovery, comes you finding a new version of yourself you didn't know existed, and a version of you that nobody else can introduce to you but you. Going through this process, even though we do this in group classes, it's a very personal experience. Everybody ends up with a completely different composition on paper, and everybody has their own internal feeling and journey, while we also have a collective one together when we are in the cauldron of the class, while we are in that safe space. A lot of the times, hearing how other people deal with issues that you might also be grappling with while you're going through this process also brings and illuminates certain perspectives you may not have thought about before. So, rounding actually puts you in this space of mind that makes sure you are not in your parasympathetic nervous system, that you are not in an agitated state. You are actually doing something that's very soothing and very calming, while at the same time dealing with some really, really heavy, dark emotions that you don't need to even express verbally. Now, there's another part to the theory that I use for our neurographic art that is very, very fundamental. And that is this idea of what this piece of paper is that we start with. I told you that with neurographic art, we have three types of expressions: our personal expressions, our societal expressions, and the universal expression. All of these expressions wouldn't mean anything if I believe that I'm limited, if I believe that only certain things are possible, and if I believe the internal programming that I have lived with for majority of my life. So central to the way that I practice neurographic art is this idea of the pleroma, the field of all probabilities and possibilities. When I start on a brand new piece of paper, on a blank canvas, that canvas is my pleroma. On that piece of paper, anything and everything that I express is 100% possible and probable. So, starting from that perspective, we then put three different expressions on that piece of paper. Whether we are doing a release, which has a different kind of intention and a different process that we go through, or we are doing programming, it doesn't matter. That first expression is our personal expression. It is my expression of what my subconscious or my conscious mind wants and needs. And I put that on paper first. I declare to the universe, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is where I am, this is what I want. That's my personal expression. Now, the next thing that we do, both in release and in programming algorithms or processes, is that we start to create neurographic lines. So if I show you in this ikigai that we had done recently in one of the classes, this is my personal expression. Regardless of what this stands for, doesn't matter. This was my first personal expression. This is what I wanted to program. Then we start to create these bigger lines, these lines that go across, not just to depict energy and give this movement and momentum, but also because we may be able to do anything in this world, but we can't do anything alone. We live in a society, like I said, we are of mother born, we are created as a we. The minute we come into this world, we are surrounded by other people. We are surrounded by society. We are surrounded by relationships. Half the time, our challenges and our trauma and our emotions are relationally based. There have been other people involved with them. And all of the time, we need other people in order to move forward in our life. We need other people to provide momentum for us. We need other people to help us get from point A to point B. We need their energy. We need their input. We need their cooperation. So once we have put our first internal, our personal expression onto paper, we then fortify it with strengthening it by bringing in societal help. And most of the time, especially in the individualistic culture of the West, we forget that we have a network we can rely on. Nobody is completely alone in this world. The minute you put yourself out there, the minute you extend a hand, the minute you present yourself, people of the same energy will gravitate naturally towards you. So recognizing that by putting ourselves out there, by expressing ourselves, by being open to receiving as much as giving, we start to realize that we are more resourceful in the solving of our problems than we thought. We are less alone than we think. That's part of what happens in trauma. People who have experienced trauma really believe that they are the only ones who have experienced it, and they're the only ones who can understand it. Nobody else can understand me. This is half the time why we don't talk about our pain, because how could anyone else understand? And yet, the minute you do it, the minute you go into a support group, the minute you start going to some kind of a therapy and you start talking about your experiences, you start to realize how prevalent they are. You start to realize you're not the only one going through this. And in that camaraderie, there is healing. So, on this pleroma, on this field of probabilities and possibilities, we first express ourselves, then we bring in the rest of the society in with us because we need them, we are part of them, we are social creatures. The fact that we have mirror neurons in our brain tells you that from an evolutionary perspective, we are social creatures and we need people around us and we need people involved in our life. So we intermingle them both in our desires and our problems and ask them with their energies to help us get through this. And then the final level of consciousness that we express is universal consciousness. Now, depending on what your ideology is, whether you are religious or not, you can call this thing different things. You can call this God energy, you can call this universal consciousness, you can call this collective consciousness. It really doesn't matter what you call it. For me, I am not religious. I don't believe in the Abrahamic religions. So for me, that universal consciousness is this energy behind expansion, because that is the nature of this universe. It is constantly expanding, it is constantly creating new things and expanding into new things. It constantly breaks down things into newer versions of themselves. So as long as we are in this place of wanting to expand, wanting to expand our experience, that universal consciousness is behind that. So in certain processes, we actually depict this universal consciousness, this higher degree of consciousness, with these really, really thick lines that we then actually round with all of the smaller lines underneath as well. And the idea of do this, I'm bringing in universal consciousness into my problem. It is not just my thing. I'm asking for help. I'm asking for guidance. I'm asking for inspiration. I'm open to receive from all different parts, not just myself, not just relying on everything I can do, but everything that the universe can bring to me and actually help me in the process of going through what it is that I'm going through. So, I think at this point, I've gone through the process of what this whole thing is, the difference between neurographic art in general, neurographica, and then the practice that I have. So if there's any questions you guys have at this moment, let me know. If you have any, there have been certain questions about, the process of how do you draw neurographic lines, how do you color, how do you do certain things. Again, if you really want to go through the regimented ideologies of Neurographica, then by all means, you can take courses through them. I think they have a basic user course that's very short, that gives you all of their very strict kind of rules. For me, this is your expression. This is your personal expression, and there is no right or wrong here. In fact, in neurographic art, we want to leave behind perfectionism, because perfection is one of those societal standards that we have learned that exists, which really doesn't. And we are always measuring ourselves up against that. And that by itself is a limiting belief. So, as long as you can draw lines or shapes to represent anything that you want, take a piece of paper, draw whatever shapes you want, write down whatever words you want, and then create these lines through them and round them, and that becomes your personal practice. You're always welcome to attend any of the classes we have, that I have. I have different classes for different purposes, but really, this is your personal expression and your personal journey. There are a lot of different Neurographica certified and other teachers that are teaching different aspects of neurographic art. There's a lot of good content on YouTube. There's also some questionable ones. I don't want to sort of shout out any creators, or I don't want to create controversy, but there's some that I found really, really amazing, and some that aren't that deep in terms of their ideology. But the more you get to practice grounding and being present and allowing yourself a moment to be with yourself without judgment, without words, the more you have the ability to switch back between conversations between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind, and the more you become aware of your own internal thought patterns as well. So in terms of the classes that we have, there is a introduction to neurographic art, which is a 6-week journey that is all releases. So we'll spend 6 weeks just doing releases. And the reason that I do it this way is because it takes minimum of 6 sessions for you to really get a hold of the neurographic art process in general, for you to stop being in this process of, am I doing this right? Am I drawing the neurographic lines right or not? Am I rounding properly or not? What are my feelings? What are my sensations? It takes a little while for that to become second nature. Once after 6 weeks that's become second nature, you're always welcome to keep coming to the intro classes and keep doing the release. Because like I said, for me, my personal practice is a tick and a talk, is a release and a programming, but I also teach in that manner. So just by teaching that, I'm doing that process naturally. So, but when it comes to, sorry, I just lost my train of thought of what I was saying. Oh, so the courses. So the first one is the 6 weeks of just doing releases and you getting very comfortable with the basics of neurographic art. Then there is 3 different courses that are 3 different journeys meant to show you different things. The first one is a 6-week journey called Journey to Self. In this process, it's 6 weeks, and every week it's a different them, unlike the intro where it's the same thing every week with different intentions, although you never get the same result. I've been releasing for 4 years and I've never, ever, ever had a duplicate of what I've done before. So every session will be new. Every session there will be a new topic, but it's the same idea every single week. And then, so, but in Journey of Self, we go through 6 different processes every week, and it is supposed to give you an insight into who you are at every step, and they kind of build on top of each other. So we start a visual representation of you as a flower, and that algorithm tells me certain things about you, and then we go into getting a deeper understanding of who you are based on your personal numerology, your personal astrology, your ancestral connections, and then we take this into creating a tree of life, which is a very interesting algorithm altogether. Then there's a journey to manifestation, which is the process of, how do I know if something is a wish or and a desire or a goal? And we start from that. We start from this place of, let's create something that's a wish. Now let's take that wish into and turn it into a goal. And step by step, every week, we build on top of that and we gain a little bit more insight about how to actually manifest this thing that we want, that we may not even have known how to get through in the very first session. And then the last journey, which is the journey that is going to start mid-August, is called the Journey to Understanding. This one is based on our chakra systems. Every single week, we're going to be doing the representation of a different chakra, and actually dealing with the mantras of that specific chakra. Because whether or not you believe in the chakra system or not, the chakra system is very similar to the hierarchy of needs in terms of our psychology. And it starts with this idea of I am, and a sense of central of personal safety. So our chakras goes from, I don't want to go name the chakras, but the mantras that they have is I am, I create, I sustain, I feel, I speak the truth, I see the truth, I understand. So every week, as we go through the depictions of these chakras, you actually go through a deeper understanding of that within yourself, of what does it mean when you say the word I am? How are you feeling in terms of your personal safety? And at the beginning of all of these sessions, there's a meditation as well that will guide you through, and it will allow you to connect with the energy of that chakra, with the color, with the sensations associated with it, and all of that. Part of what neurographic art does in general is unite the bodily sensations with thoughts and emotions. That's the point, that you are present in all aspects. There is physical sensations that we start to change and alter, as well as thoughts and emotions that run with any of these um, subjects that we talk about. So those are the 3 journeys. These journeys are going to repeat themselves over time. I'm going to add more journeys. But for the intro classes right now, if you are in the US, there is a class happening every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I've just added a new class that starts next Wednesday. It will be on Wednesdays at noon. If you are in the continental US and that's being in the middle of the day is not a problem for you, by all means, feel free to join those classes. Um, And but everybody who's in Europe, who's 6, 7 hours ahead of me, for them this will be their evening time. So you can always feel free to jump into any of those classes. And we have a new journey to self starting early August, and then all the other ones thereafter. So if you want to join me on any of them, visit the website. All the information is on the website for you to be able to enroll. If you have any questions about anything, you know exactly where to get a hold of me. You can leave comments on this video. I will make sure to check the comments on here. And if there are any questions, to address that. And also, another thing that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to start next month with every full moon and new moon, so twice a month. I'm actually going to have a live session on YouTube that will be free, that you get to experience a watered down version of what we do in class. In class, it's safe space. It is on Zoom. It is recorded, but I never show it in public. I actually give the students a replay of the class if they wanted to look at it again. But I turn them into time lapses. Some of you have seen some time lapses. I'm a little bit behind, so there will be more coming soon. So in class, it's a very different, intimate environment. Even if there's quite a few of us, it's a much more intimate experience. On here, the experience will be much more open, and it will be a little bit more diluted because I won't actually have the ability to see you guys when I'm running class. Everybody's cameras are open and I can see them, and if I can't, I can check in with them and make sure you are emotionally in a good state and I'm not leaving you on your own. But because on YouTube I don't have that ability, we're going to go through very light versions of neurographic art that at least gets you accustomed to the process, but it doesn't require you to really be in that safe space. So that's it. Any questions? Anything? Kathleen has been to classes already. She has experienced both. She's halfway through. Sorry, Kathleen, I shouted you out right now because I saw your name on my chats, but uh, yes, Angie, I'm glad you're enjoying the experience. There is a lot of information about Neurographica by Neurographica certified instructors as well. Um, I just found the whole process to be rigid and limiting in some ways, so I have made it a little. And for me, it is important to follow the two together, to not just be in programming or just in releases, but actually have a balance of both. I have found that that has really helped me. So that's something that Neurographica by itself doesn't necessarily focus on. They just focus on creating more and more algorithms and making them more and more complicated. For Angie, for all the costs, I don't want to go through all of them right now. All of the information is on the website, maryamini.com. It's easy. I'm easy. Just follow my name, put it in, and all the information will be on the Neurographic Art page. If you scroll all the way down, all the start dates, all the costs, all of everything will be there for you to take a look at. And I, being the motor mouth I have talked for about an hour. I was hoping to keep this to about half an hour, but we went for a full hour. And if there's any questions or anything, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. If you are not watching this on the live and you're going to watch it on the replay, then by all means, leave questions, comments. I will look at it and I will either do another live to answer your questions or I'll make comments below. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being patient. Sorry for the technical difficulties the first time we did this. For some reason, the microphone on my computer didn't want to pick up, and thankfully, the AirPod solved that problem. So thank you for being part of my first live. I was actually very nervous about doing this because I've done this on Zoom quite a few times. I've just never done it on YouTube live, and I didn't know how this was going to go. But I think overall it went well, and I'll figure out how to use two cameras so that next time we can have a very interactive session and I can show you some things on paper. Fantastic. So, oh, another thing, if you, thank you, Angie. If you want to try a release session, I'm having a drop-in class on Sunday. We're going to have a class on Sunday at noon that is going to be a release. So if you want to try this session, if you watch this live in time, so today's the 21st. On the 23rd of July, there's going to be a drop-in session. If you want to be part of that, please let me know. Get in touch with me. Email me, info@maryamini.com. My information should all be on my YouTube channel, but let me know and I will get you into that drop-in class as well. But that's all I have for now. I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend. I'm teaching every day this weekend. I'm going to see Kathleen. I will see you tomorrow, bright and early, Alberta time. And I will see whoever wants to be there on Sunday and hope to see you all in class at some point or another. But even if I don't, please do yourself a favor, follow along on YouTube, get as much information as you can, and just try it at home for yourself. Believe me, you will not regret it. It is a really, really powerful process and a very, very simple one at that. And in a world where access to therapists is becoming more and more difficult, at least this is a way for us to be able to self regulate our nervous system and remove ourselves from being in a reactive state and put ourselves more into a responsive state and a creative space so we can create the kind of life we want to experience, not just play on repeat what has been programmed into us. And that's it. That's all I have today. Have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you for being here with me, and we'll see you all soon.